Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So, today we're tackling a big one, jealousy, specifically in romantic relationships.
Yeah, it's always a tricky subject, isn't it?
Definitely. And we're using a really honest conversation as our springboard.
Hmm.
It's from Vietsetter's Yulan, Season 3, Episode 1, with Thuy Min and the artist Bins.
Right, I listened to that. They were surprisingly open about it.
They really were. So our plan today is basically to unpack what they talked about, pull out those key insights. We want to get a better handle on what jealousy actually is.
And what it isn't, like how it differs from just being insecure or possessive.
Exactly. And look at its impact from their different viewpoints.
Mm.
The goal is really to give you, listening, a clearer way to think about this feeling, maybe help you navigate it yourself.
Sounds good. It's compelling because while jealousy is something a lot of us feel but maybe don't always want to admit to, they kind of put it all out there.
Okay, so let's get right into it then. They start with the Vietnamese word ghen, which means jealousy. And right off the bat, Bins talks about how he used to actively hide being jealous.
Yeah, he said he saw it as a weakness linked to insecurity.
Precisely. Like it was something embarrassing he didn't want people to see. Which, I mean, that's a common script, right? Especially maybe for men.
Definitely. That whole vulnerability equals weakness idea is powerful, that societal pressure. Recognizing that is kind of the first step, I think.
But then he flips it or considers the other side. He acknowledges this more maybe romantic idea that, a little bit of jealousy could actually show you're afraid of losing someone.
Ah, the classic dilemma. Is it a character flaw or is it like a sign you care? It really shows how ambiguous the feeling itself can be.
Totally. And his own definition, he talks about jealousy as that feeling when you have to share someone's presence, their love. But what struck me was how broad his triggers were. It wasn't just about another person.
Right. It could be anything from someone just being physically close to his partner.
To something totally abstract, like being jealous of her dedication to your career. He even joked about being jealous of the rain falling on her eyelashes.
Wow. Okay. Jealous of the rain. That really says something about how irrational it can feel.
Doesn't it? Have you ever felt something quite that abstract?
Maybe not the rain. But it captures that all-encompassing feeling. And he makes an interesting point there, finding jealousy towards abstract things like work.
Somehow more acceptable than being jealous of a specific person.
Yeah. Maybe because jealousy towards a person feels like a direct threat from outside, while jealousy about, say, a career feels more internal. Like maybe you feel you're not getting enough attention or security.
That makes sense. It's rooted differently. One feels like a rival, the other like a lack of something within the relationship itself.
Exactly, which often points to needing more validation or security from your partner.
Which leads neatly into this next really tricky area they discuss. That line between just fearing loss and becoming, well, controlling.
Ah, yes, the slippery slope.
And Bins admits something pretty surprising here. He said in the past, he sometimes created situations to make a partner jealous.
He did. Why?
Not maliciously, he says, but almost strategically, to push them to break up with him so he wouldn't have to do it directly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's quite a maneuver. Definitely not the healthiest way to handle things.
Not at all. It speaks volumes about maybe avoiding direct, honest communication back then, right?
Absolutely. Using jealousy manipulatively like that, it stops being about the relationship's value and becomes about avoiding discomfort or responsibility.
He does try to differentiate, though. He talks about expressing concern like, hey, who are you with? As maybe just caring.
Versus actual controlling behavior, which is more about suspicion and limiting freedom.
Right. One's about connection, the other's about restriction. It's a subtle but really important difference.
And that leads to Thuy Min's point, which I thought was really insightful, about how sometimes peace in a relationship can feel like boredom.
Oh, yeah. That resonated. Like, when things are calm, you think, is the spark gone? But when things are chaotic, all you want is that peace.
Exactly. And she suggests the difference isn't the lack of drama, but maybe a lack of commitment. Or attentiveness was the word she used.
Right. Consciously appreciating what you have. That seems key to avoiding both boredom and that kind of anxious jealousy.
It shifts the focus inward, doesn't it? Onto gratitude and engagement rather than needing external drama or validation.
And this connects to something, they mentioned this dictionary of love idea for the Yulan season.
Ah, right. A way to define emotions for better understanding.
And guess what the first word in their dictionary is?
Let me guess. Jealousy.
You got it. Seems they see it as pretty fundamental to figure out.
Well, it certainly causes a lot of issues if you don't.
Which brings us to Binns sharing something quite personal. He's experienced betrayal in the past,
Mm-hmm. He mentioned that.
and his reflection was really interesting. He basically realized that whether he was jealous beforehand or not,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't stop the betrayal.
That's a tough realization. So what did he take from that?
He decided to aim for a more peaceful approach now. Essentially, deal with the pain if it happens, rather than living in constant anxiety, always watching, always suspecting.
That's a major shift. Choosing presence over perpetual worry. It takes a certain kind of strength, I think. Less about control, more about resilience.
But then Thuy Min offers a different angle. She talks about a long 9-year relationship she was in,
Okay.
and her partner apparently showed almost no jealousy. You'd even ask sometimes, like, should I be jealous about this?
Ah, really?
Yeah. And while she felt valued, she also said she felt a kind of lack of reaction when she was, as she put it, wobbling.
So the absence of jealousy didn't feel entirely positive to her either.
Exactly. It made her question if Binns' approach, internalizing it, trying to dismiss it, is always the best path. Can it sometimes be misinterpreted?
That's a great point. Like, if you never show any reaction, does your partner think you don't care? Or that you don't see their value enough to fear losing them?
Right. And Binns himself kind of concedes that point later, that suppressing it completely might come across as indifference.
So it leads to the big question, if trust is really, really strong,
Yeah.
is jealousy even necessary?
Binns' first instinct is no. If trust is the bedrock, jealousy shouldn't really have a place.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Always. He adds that trust takes time to build, especially if you've been hurt before. So maybe early on, before that deep trust is cemented, jealousy is more likely then.
That feels very realistic. Trust isn't a switch you flip, it's earned, it grows. And past wounds definitely play a role.
Thuy Min then throws in another fascinating idea about potential gender differences.
Ooh, how so?
She wonders if maybe men see trust as something that, like, fills up the space, pushing jealousy out, whereas women, maybe they feel more jealous later in a relationship.
More jealous later. Why?
As they get more emotionally invested, maybe. More aware of what they have to lose as things get deeper. And maybe more attuned to nuances.
Interesting. So as intimacy grows, maybe the fear of losing that intimacy also grows for some. That's a complex thought. It definitely challenges the simple idea that trust just eliminates jealousy entirely.
It does. So, okay, if Binns does feel jealous now, how does he handle it?
Yeah.
Thuy Min asks him straight up.
And what does he say?
His approach is very inward looking. He tends to think, okay, why am I feeling this? Is it about my shortcomings, my own insecurity?
So he reflects internally first rather than confronting his partner.
Exactly. He uses it as a trigger for self-reflection.
Which sounds quite mature, in a way, taking responsibility for your feelings, but...
But, Thuy Min points out, could that also be a way to avoid being vulnerable? To avoid actually talking to his partner about those uncomfortable feelings?
Right. Avoiding the potentially difficult conversation. And she mentions that societal pressure, again, the expectation to be rational about jealousy.
Yeah, that makes it hard to just say, look, I'm feeling this messy, irrational thing right now.
Definitely. Bottling it up might look calm, but it doesn't resolve the underlying feeling, does it? It's that balance, again, managing yourself versus communicating openly.
Thuy Min also talks about intuition. Specifically, she mentions a strong female intuition, that feeling when something's just off in the relationship, even without proof.
Ah, the famous intuition. And does Binns agree?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
He acknowledges women often sense a schist first. It's about that emotional attunement, picking up subtle cues, maybe.
Could be. It's not magic. It's often based on observation, knowing someone's patterns. But it's powerful.
They then pivot a bit, talking about Binns' image, his past bad boy persona versus what Thuy Min calls his more wholesome present.
Okay. And she wonders.
She wonders if his past partners felt a lot of jealousy, given that image.
Makes sense. Public image, past reputation, that must have an impact.
Binns basically says, yeah, it was likely and probably understandable, which highlights how external stuff really can feed into relationship dynamics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the need for, again, open communication about those histories, those perceptions.
And he's pretty firm here. He says he wouldn't stay with someone who couldn't accept his past or kept bringing up old stuff that couldn't be fixed.
A clear boundary. Acknowledging the past, but needing to move forward together, that feels important for any relationship, really. If old issues constantly resurface through jealousy, it's hard to progress.
And speaking of the past, He circles back to that earlier point about intentionally making partners jealous.
Right, the breakup avoidance tactic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like avoiding direct confrontation was a bit of a pattern for him back then.
It reinforces that idea of jealousy being used, sometimes as a tool, a damaging one perhaps, but a tool to manipulate a situation, even if it's just to avoid difficult conversations.
They both really land on the intensity of strong jealousy, though. Thuy Min compares it to a hot fog.
A hot fog, I like that. Clouds everything.
It's exactly. Obscures reason. And Binns adds that the stronger the love, the thicker that fog or wall becomes, making it incredibly hard to think straight or make good decisions.
That captures it perfectly. That overwhelming, irrational feeling where logic just flies out the window leads to impulsive reactions sometimes.
Which leads Thuy Min to suggest that maybe the best thing is inaction, at least initially. She mentions the 24-hour rule.
Ah, yes. Wait a day before reacting. Let things cool down.
Yeah. Give yourself time to see what really matters. But Binns admits he finds that super hard. His impulse is to immediately try and understand what his partner is feeling.
That's understandable, too, wanting immediate clarity. But the 24-hour rule, it's classic advice for a reason. Gives perspective, prevents saying or doing something you regret in the heat of the moment.
But they both agree understanding your partner's feelings, especially around jealousy, is just really complex.
It absolutely is.
Thuy Min tells a story where she felt jealous, but her partner was actually just really happy about something completely unrelated. Her feelings were totally disconnected from his reality.
That's such a good example. Our interpretation is filtered through our own stuff, isn't it?
Right.
What feels like a threat to us might be totally innocent for them. Empathy, trying to see their side. Crucial.
So, moving towards his art, Thuy Min asks if jealousy has directly inspired his music.
Good question for a musician.
His answer was interesting. He said his songs often touch on regret, longing, things that might have jealousy mixed in.
But he rarely writes directly from his own feeling of jealousy.
Right. And part of the reason, he says, is that he feels uncomfortable looking back at what he sees as a more immature version of himself in those older songs.
That's revealing. A sign of personal growth, maybe. Wanting to move beyond those raw, perhaps less processed emotions in his current work.
He talks about how his expression of pain has evolved, too, from, dramatic teenage declarations
Dude's all been there.
to more subtle, deeper feelings as an adult. And Thuy Min relates, saying her experience of jealousy has also become more nuanced over time.
It really sounds like emotional maturation, doesn't it? The feelings might still be there,
Right.
but the understanding and expression become more complex, maybe less outward.
The conversation kind of comes full circle, back to this idea of, hey, you falling out of love. Binns talks about fearing the end of love, but also knowing he's found new connections after past relationships ended. It's sort of hopeful, considering the topic.
It is. It acknowledges the pain, but also the resilience, the possibility of new beginnings, the cycle of relationships.
Thuy Min then has this reflection on vulnerability, how sometimes we almost wish for simpler survival instincts instead of wrestling with complex things like trust.
Yeah, emotions make us feel exposed, vulnerable. It's tempting to want something simpler.
And she frames it as a choice. Do you want to just survive love, get through it? Or do you want to fully experience it knowing that pain is a possibility?
That's a powerful question. Risk versus reward, almost.
And her conclusion is that Yulan, the series itself, seems to lean towards choosing peace in relationships.
Making active choices for well-being, minimizing unnecessary conflict. A conscious approach.
So wrapping up our deep dive on this conversation, it's clear jealousy is this incredibly complex mix, rooted in insecurity, fear of loss, shaped massively by trust.
Yeah, and we saw how differently people can feel it, express it, cope with it, maybe even some gender nuances there.
We looked at internal reflection versus talking it out, how it can be hidden, even used intentionally sometimes, and just how overwhelming it can feel, that hot fog.
And how our understanding of these intense emotions can actually evolve as we mature. It ends on that note of choosing peace, being intentional.
Which leads us to our final thought for you. Thinking about everything Binns and Thuy Min shared and what we've discussed. How could understanding your own jealousy triggers, your typical responses, maybe help you find more peace and security in your relationships?
And is choosing peace maybe like Binns tries to do by internalizing always a sign of maturity? Or does it sometimes risk, burying issues that actually need to come out into the open? Something to definitely mull over.